Hi, everyone.
Hey, Lorenzo.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Michael.
So we have 6 of us here. Should we wait 1 more minute and then start? The words caused Rohit to disappear.
It's 5 a.m. photo heat, so he probably is still waking up.
So he's in California. I didn't know. I had no idea where he was. Okay, well, let's start. So welcome to this working session of the ASDF, a Semantic Definition Format, virtual interim. I'm Michael. Lorenzo is also here. He's co-chair. He told me he's on some super duper 5G connection, which might not work every day. Our agenda today, we're going to be working through the issues on NIPSI and then any other business that you might have. Does anyone have any other business for today? We are meeting in Madrid in, 3 weeks? If you have any other other topics for then, that would be great to bring up on the mailing list, that is. Note well, this meeting is recorded. Be nice and be professional. There's an IETF code of conduct that essentially says be nice to each other. And noting that if you have any IPR, that you need to let us know that if you're aware of it, or if you're aware of any IPR, you need to let the IETF know. And this is a list of the various code of conducts and anti-harassment. And if you have any issues, you can come to the working group chairs or the area director or the ombuds team with your issues. And we'd like to know about them. Speak slowly, limit use of slang, attack the arguments, not the people, and let's find the best solution. Okay, I think, Rohit, it's up to you. Take it away. Do you want to share your screen with the issue? I'm not getting any audio from you, Bart. Did you? Oh, did something happen? So it seems unstable. Many people losing their audio.
Hello, I'm sorry. I was giving permissions and it seemed to have ended my session.
Okay.
So I will try again.
As Lorenzo is able to give you permission quickly, because I never seem to be able to push the button.
Michael, you have the fan blowing in your
Yeah,
microphone?
I'll turn it off. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it seems to be sharing something else. Okay, let me try again. Yes. Allow. Okay, I guess now, can you see the issues? The list of issues now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so like last time, I'll take it from the top and go through them one by one. The first one actually came out of the last interim, and this is about us looking at context types, and actually instead of having fixed values, utilizing content format quality in the SDF model. This is still open. We have not looked at that yet, so no conclusion here. I think we will look at that and get back on before the face-to-face. The second one is the big one. I think we and kind of the reason for draft 8, and I did want to have a little bit of a discussion here on this. So we have like a few implementations out there of NIPSI already, and most of the earlier implementations were not using kind of the SDF global names, but our latest implement. Sorry,
I lost the screen.
you did?
Yeah.
Oh,
am I the only one?
Yeah, I mean, I am not sharing anymore for some reason. I don't know why. Yes. Allow. Okay. So yeah. So now, so you can see the issue again.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So so we since we've been, you know, in kind of the first implementation we were doing, since we were using SDF global names, we ran into this issue with a proxy that was using a Jetty service for some lookup, and you could see here that it was issuing a 400 with ambiguous URI path separator, and this was basically because the SDF global name uses, as you can see above here, percent encoded reserved characters, in this case a slash, right? And then that Jetty service was not allowing that. So in kind of with deeper investigations, looking at RFC 3986, which defines, which characters can be normalized and not normalized, and when you should normalize them, And then again, also RFC 9110, which kind of gives actually some very nice examples on when you should do that. We kind of came to the conclusion, oh, this is very clear. Percent encoded reserved characters should not be normalized, right? The RFCs are very clear about it. And what's all the fuss? Now, it turns out that actually, although we might think it's clear, it's not clear to everybody on like every developer or every implementer out there or everybody on the internet. And there's a whole lot of discussion on this, and there's also a whole lot of implementations that do it wrong. As a result, there's quite a few path traversal vulnerabilities, right? So from kind of the very standard ones, which would be like you've got a // in the path, to more sophisticated ones that actually utilize different versions of files, like one in cache and one on the server, for example. It's also kind of all path traversal. There's but it's more sophisticated path traversal. There's also authentication issues where there's some authentication happening on the front end and on the back end. Some client, JavaScript running on the client versus the server. So there's quite a few issues here, actually not related to how this is specified, right? That's very clear. And the specification, if everybody would follow the specification, it would work. But it's basically because, implementations normalize these reserved characters when they should not. Okay, and from that perspective, what we've seen, and there's kind of a few examples, I think, down here in the discussion. From what we see is that a lot of servers and also proxies kind of do not allow things like encoded slashes or some other reserved characters by default. It doesn't mean that you cannot enable that. So they will perfectly kind of follow RFC 3986. However, by default they don't, which kind of immediately results when you go implement something like this in conversations with InfoSec and security teams, because they'll be like extremely cautious and you never know what implementation how this is implemented, and they're not going to be reviewing all the code. So we kind of feel like that this is a hurdle for the API, right? And we want the API to be implementable like in the broadest possible way, without having to have or having to interface with InfoSec and security teams to kind of explain that this implementation actually doesn't have an issue, right? And obviously implementations of NIPSI could have an issue if the implementer doesn't properly implement it. So from that perspective, we kind of feel like the way to the best path or the best approach here is to avoid the discussion altogether. And when we looked at kind of the possible alternatives, like the most feasible one seemed like to basically move the parameter, or like the global name parameter, from the path to the query, so it becomes a query parameter. And like there's no implementation that has an issue with that. It may be a little bit different stylistically, but we don't see that there's a huge disadvantage to go in that route. So what we did is we made a proposal in draft 8 that kind of changes that. So the group can review it and provide comments. And so I don't know if there's any thoughts on this. I think Karsten already reacted on the mailer, and thank you, Karsten, for kind of getting the HTTP API group involved. But I guess we should keep this one open and to allow more discussion, but this seems like the best approach to us so far.
Yeah, so there is this is a difficult situation when you have a protocol and some people have had security problems with implementations of this protocol and now are set in their ways of avoiding certain parts of the protocol because it used to have security problems in the past.
Yeah.
And there is no technical solution to that. You can just work around the damage, around the damage, we would say, in the internet. So I'm going to keep try to keep some discussion up in the HTTP API working group on what the actual damage is. And there is a first response from Daniel Sternberg, who of course does not have any of these problems in his implementation. So he reacted a little bit indicated about us bringing this up. But in the end, we essentially need to have a survey of what's actually possible with real-world implementations and the real-world perception of their security properties by people who actually have to run these systems. And again, that's not a technical problem. So I would spend maybe 2 weeks more to find out fact-finding mission to find out what the damage is and then decide on a solution. But I already agree that pushing everything over into the query parameters probably is the obvious way to handle this.
Yeah. And it's not that there's not plenty of configurability in kind of all the web servers that kind of implement this careful strategy as default. But it's just that if you have the conversations with the InfoSec teams are very difficult because they'll bring up, they're really just trying to, I would say, cover, make sure that they are fully covered and that no potential issues can happen, and they often don't really understand the implementation. So the careful thing for them to do is just say, okay, if that's the default recommendation of the web service, we will follow that, right? So that's where that's the discussion typically that happens.
Hey everybody, Bart. I've been following. On the one hand, it pisses me off royally that. On the other hand, it's happened before. We found features or protocols that way. Karsten, what I would like to see out of this, there's nothing right there. They're like, there's nothing people can do in it.
Hey, Elliot.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing you. I like missing more than half your packets. I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, it's not great, and I thought it was an echo off someone else's microphone, but
All right.
yeah.
How about this? Is it better?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, that's what you get for. I'm just having the AV day of my life. What can I tell you? Sorry about that. So I'll just start again. I'm a little bit pissed off that you're in this position, but I don't think it's appropriate to hold up this document on this issue. I think your proposed approach is correct. However, that having been said, I think we've learned before that sometimes we need to change based on this. I'm not thinking about ASDF per se, but I think this has to go back to the people who are responsible for RFC 3986 and follow-on work to say, okay, well, the percent encoding for / has been polluted in some way. We have to take that into account to document reality. So Karsten, it sounds like you've started that conversation. If it dries up, I'm going to put on another hat and say, if the HTTP API people don't take this up, please let's have a conversation about getting something written in the independent stream to say, hey, we found a problem with encoding. Please be careful. When you're using this, let's when you're using this encoding, you might run into some problems. Here's how they're documented. One of the things, though, that I would love to see, and I'll jump onto the HTTP API list to follow this, is that the Tomcat and Jetty people actually participate in the discussion rather than just make assumptions. Now, it's possible that what's actually happened here is that when they're doing dispatch downstream, people are just shoddy with their code and do stupid things with the code downstream, and so they're trying to help people essentially protect themselves against their own bad code. That's distinctly possible, in which case that should get documented too, but there's still not much we can do about it other than to address it. So I realize it's not really an ASDF thing, though. Let's just make sure it all gets documented. And again, I'll jump on the HTTP API list to follow up. And I think, Bart, one of the things you should do is also track that list on this issue in particular. You'll be a really good resource for them.
Yeah, will do. Okay. I mean, yeah, we ran into it, so can definitely comment. All right. Any other
did this
comments?
issue get back to the ASDF list? Because I guess I feel surprised that I didn't read about it already.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. Yesterday it did. Yeah.
Oh, yesterday it got back. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I was off yesterday. Okay.
So I was trying to keep the discussion that Elliot just talked about in the HTTP API list. So I didn't CC the ASDF list because I really want the discussion to be focused on what's the damage and what do we have to document to be able to do HTTP-based protocols in the future.
Okay. Anyone else wants to comment on this one? Okay, so I
shared my screen because we kept losing you, Bart. So tell me what the next issue you want to do.
Oh, okay. I just thought this like, this looks
weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go through like all of them one by one then. Yeah.
Okay, just tell me which one you want next is what I'm telling you.
Yeah, okay. The get ID property read all is the third one. So the conclusion is the Jetty one I will keep open for further discussion. And then, the workaround has already been posted in draft 8. So, that could be reviewed as well. All right, get ID property. Good to clarify that. Yeah, this is, I think we discussed this one last time as well. So maybe we can kind of scroll down and see what the result on this was, or what we. Yeah, so we are, the use case that was brought forward here in the last interim was importing onboarded devices from Gateway. And this is something we feel like we need to bring into Skim. So a discussion that we're going to have with actually Elliot and his compadres on Skim for devices, so that we can look at that. So that's under investigation still. We'll try to get feedback on that by the next interim. So that one was also from last week. Then, so that remains open, Michael. So
Okay.
then Ayana considerations. Yeah, I don't think we have to. This still is work to be done. We have to. This is just making sure that we track that still has to be done. So I think also no action in this call. NIPSI action APIs with embedded protocol mapping. We also talked about that last time. Remember, Michael, this is where we got rid of a lot of. This was a comment from you.
Yeah, I just want to add, I did get rid of this text. Because it was just left in one place.
Yeah, so the examples have been updated, Rohit. You were going to take that over, right? Yeah.
Yeah, in the text, I think it mentioned embedded protocol, so I've removed that now. So I think this is
Okay.
complete.
So this, so we discussed this last time, and we found that we still had some mention of it in the text, and is now removed. So I think we can close this one if everybody's okay with it. I hear no objections, so I'm going to close it. Yeah, SDF uppercase is the next one. So, sorry, SDF uppercase, which is under NIPSI actions. Should SDF model be uppercase everywhere? I don't, yeah, we have actually focused on most of the model. We haven't addressed the text yet, so this should stay open. We'll do that by the next one.
Can you explain what that question means?
It's just in the text. Sometimes we have so we have SDF using SDF lowercase, and Michael asked if we should use SDF uppercase everywhere in the text.
This is not a technical question, but an editorial question.
Yes,
so
editorial.
We always have this problem whether we do things in a case sensitive or a case insensitive way, and of course 2025 we should be doing things in a case sensitive way always, unless we are bound to something else by history. I think for the text we can come up with 2 or 3 simple rules. So if you point me to the places where the question comes up, I may be able to write up those rules.
Okay. So that I will note that. Okay. Then we have X request ID. So this is also from Michael. So we have an X request ID in every NIPSI request response to uniquely identify the request. We had a discussion on this. I don't think it was last time, but in the meeting before, where X request ID maybe it's like used commonly, but it's not a kind of official header. So what we did is, if an implementation wants to use it, an implementation could use it, but we removed it from the spec. So NIPSI doesn't use X request ID as part or spec as usage of X request ID in the specification.
So you said something like someone wants to use it, but I don't see how that can be the case if it's not in the spec. You're saying don't use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's out of. We removed it basically.
So we leave this open until PR 90 is merged.
90 is already merged.
It's
that
merged,
was draft 7. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in draft
Okay.
7. Yeah.
Did you want to close that PR since it's not? It looks like it's open.
I think the PR is already closed, so I think we can close the issue.
Yeah, we
yeah, it's already merged.
yeah, we didn't close any issues based on the PRs because otherwise we'd close them before we reviewed them with the team. So I'll close this one. Async responses. Yeah, this is a typo in the text, which you caught, Michael. Good job. So we will. Did you correct this one? I didn't correct this one, Rohit. Did you correct this one?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's corrected. So that we should be able to close then as well.
You didn't actually you said that was a typo, that it was 200 and it should have been 202 accepted. But what about the pattern where you said that return HTTP status and ability? So it's going to complete what I thought was that this was a 201 response, which means come back and ask for the status of this request later.
Yes, that is the pattern that we have, but it actually, like when I look through it, everyone seems to be using 202, not 201. So you say 202 accepted, and then you give a location to the status API, and then you can call the status API or redirect to it, and that's where you would get. That's what you would poll to know if it is done or not. So we were already doing that. We just had the wrong status. We were returning 200.
It's news to me that it's 202 rather than 201, but I'll take your word for it. And I guess is HTTP API, they've specified something clear on this?
No, I don't think it was specified in the API. I think it was just a pattern that everyone's following. But 201 is created and 202 is accepted. So accepted seems to be the one that's being used everywhere.
Okay, even though you created a status object. Okay, all right, I understand.
We can keep this open and look into it a little more if you want.
All I was saying is that if there was a spec that you could point to as for the pattern, that would probably be better. But if there isn't, if it's just a well-known pattern, well, maybe that's another question for HTTP API.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But let's leave it open and check if we could find something in HTTP API. Okay. It's been a while, this one. Can Lipsy gateway separate? So yes. So the should we reference? So I don't think we fully addressed this one yet. So should we reference RFC 90?
So that's about the UUID spec.
Yeah.
And there are 8 kinds of. I was the co-chair of that, so I know too much about it. So the question is, does it matter what kind of UUID is generated? I suspect the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I was unclear. I think when I was reading, I was unclear whether the UUID is generated by the SCIM server or the NIPSI gateway, and seems like it's the SCIM server to me.
Correct. It is the SCIM server.
But then it leaves a discovery problem if for some reason there isn't a SCIM server. I don't know if there's a use case where there isn't one, but I would think that would be reasonable. Maybe the answer is the client has to learn the UUID somehow, and if you can't get it that way, then it's out of band, or
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So the UUID of the identifier of the device needs to be known to the client in order to call the API. And yes, it's usually generated by the SCIM server. And we kind of, you kind of also bring up another point, Michael. It was we kind of stay away from saying that, SCIM is mandatory for NIPSI, right? Because, if you have a UUID of a device, you should be able to call it. But, obviously, the device would have to be known to the client in order to do that. So onboarding it, it seems like logical to have, to leverage SCIM to onboard the device. So yeah, I don't know if we have to fully tie NIPSI to SCIM, like as in, you have to have a SCIM server, or if, we can claim that, yes, it's good. You want to use SCIM, but you can also, if you have a UUID, you can run a NIPSI request without having done SCIM.
So I suggest that you put an applicability statement, and maybe there's one in there. And I remember when I did my review, I didn't get through the whole document, and I haven't come back to that yet. I'm sorry. So I'm suggesting maybe applicability, and it might only have 3 sentences. Is that, the SCIM server, the NIPSI is dependent on SCIM server to provide the UIDs of the devices. And in situations where there is no server or whatever, then some other mechanism would be necessary. That someone would have to define, right? That's all.
Yeah.
Do you want me to leave this open, or do you want me to open a new issue?
No, you leave this one open. I think I'm taking notes as well. Okay. Yeah, this we still need to work on well-known URI. There's still need to work on this. So this can be open. We haven't really continued on this yet. JSON versus CBOR. Yeah, is JSON everywhere versus CBOR for publish subscribe. So the RESTful API is JSON based, and we went with binary for with CBOR for MQTT data because it's binary. If you remember correctly, we actually had protobuf there first, and then in one of the earlier drafts, based on feedback of the group, we moved that to CBOR. If we were to use JSON on the MQTT side, it all has to be base 64 encoded, so that wouldn't be very efficient. And then, for a client, JSON is kind of, the standard or the default with regards to REST APIs as well. So it seems like both protocols are well suited to their purpose. So, but Michael, if I'm happy to kind of hear more thoughts from you on this one.
Well, I take very strongly your point that, you're going with whatever those ecosystems are using.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And then I got the other side. It's like, okay, so I'm throwing a JSON library and a CBOR library into a bunch of places, and I have to deal with which parts I have to translate back and forth, or what, or I don't know, differing amounts of security considerations around each one or something. And so that's all I'm sort of saying. I mean, I don't like protobuf because it's not self-describing enough to allow us to upgrade or do versioning, particularly for MQTT, where this is many readers, right? So I've seen MQTT used extensively with JSON, but I mean, I take your point about base 64, but I don't know whether that's matters. All I'm saying is I'm still more concerned about the people writing code, that they get lost and wind up base 64 encoding some stuff going into CBOR and whatever, which would be wrong, but people might do it.
Yeah. The thing is that most of the like in the use cases that we've deployed it in, for example, like most of the MQTT or the CBOR based data is binary already.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. And then the calling the RESTful APIs, if binary encoding that would be, I would say, from an engineering perspective or from a development perspective, maybe a little bit harder than JSON.
Okay, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just asking if there's an argument for consistency here. But I think I go with what I wrote, was that you're sticking to the common patterns that are out there.
Yeah.
That uses, and I can accept that. I just probably we need to note why that is. We'll get review comments about why both.
Okay, so I can add a comment on why both.
And maybe there are instances where actually there are, I'm going to call them clients, maybe there's their peers, that would have run MQTT only to do something, or would have used the JSON REST API only, and so they're actually, the occurrence of them of having to have one program with both is not that often, except for the gateway that does both.
Yeah, I mean, JSON only is definitely a possibility. MQTT only or CBOR, like binary data only, would be harder, because you'd have to, you need at least to do a request to start the to start streaming the data. It's
Karsten?
Well, I would just add that adding choices, options, alternatives to a protocol does not make it better.
Yeah.
So if we can agree on one way of doing this, we will reduce the cost of deploying this immensely.
Yeah, as long as we agree on what that one way is, right? Then I agree with you.
Of course, I mean that's the point. So the HTTP level stuff is JSON, the actual data level stuff is binary, and I think that's a pretty good way to describe what the industry is doing at the moment. And that may change in the next 10 years or so, but right now that's the way we are operating.
Okay. So I can add a little more context in this issue, and then we maybe review it and close it next time. Is that okay? All right.
Go ahead. Next
one. Yeah, I think we didn't address this one yet. Authorization, yeah. I mean, authorization. We probably need to add this in the security considerations. But I think we'd go with the typical approaches there, like either API key or open API implementations and so forth. Certificates even.
So you've just talked about mechanisms of authenticating the authorized item, the item entity. I'm actually asking, which client is allowed to turn which light bulb on and off. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And is that part introspectable?
Yeah, actually, so actually Skim allows for part of that. So Skim has an extension called endpoint apps, and so for every device, an application can be defined there that could do specific things. So, for example, there is an endpoint app for NIPSI for control commands, and then there's an endpoint app for everything that's kind of data streaming as well. So, for example, somebody can send a request to a device, but somebody else can, for example, or ask a device to start streaming some data that somebody else could receive, and that person or that app that receives the data may not be allowed to actually kind of instruct the device to start sending it or do anything else with the device. So that is defined in Skim.
Okay, so probably we just need if
Refer
there's
to
some
it.
other text about that already,
Yeah.
maybe I missed it, but it needs a forward reference.
I think you didn't miss it. I think we don't have the reference. I think we should add it. Okay. Can leave this one open and we'll add the reference. Does it make sense to reference draft? That's a good question, because draft IETF Skim device model uses Skim. So if you just read that one, you're just getting a schema. You're not learning about kind of what Skim actually does. So I don't know if we but it does. I think we should probably reference both drafts, both the Skim draft and the device model. So the Skim RFC and the device model draft. Yeah, so both of them. So that one can stay open as well, because we haven't addressed it yet.
I don't know. I think we already referenced both. But
Yeah, but I think Michael found some instances where we just say Skim
okay.
versus, so we should just look at that.
Got it. Yeah.
Figure 2. Yeah, we can Michael, that's not a problem. If you think if that makes you happy, we can turn them around, no problem. Yeah, we haven't done that yet.
You do what works for you. I was surprised. Maybe other people are, but if you don't care, well, anyway, I hope other people in the group have some opinion. Maybe we should put that on the screen.
So I can. Figure 2. Yeah, actually, you're right. I actually, when I typically draw this, I draw it the other way around too. Correct. Yes. Yeah.
When I look at it now, I'm not so. I actually feel it's better this way, but I don't know. That's why I asked. Okay.
No. But I do draw it typically the other way around. Yeah, I don't know why this one is. I ended up doing it this way. But yeah.
One comment here. Practically this exact diagram appears or will appear in the latest update to the Skim draft. And I think you should just borrow the diagram actually to show it.
Okay.
The other thing that I'll mention is that Eric Bank made me make use of the AASVG tool, which will automatically turn this into an SVG for the HTML. So you can just, which by the way, takes 2 minutes to set up.
Okay. I'll steal your Skim diagram then, Elliot.
Yeah, that sounds good. And what you can do, like, you can just say, in a note saying this, you just say that you've done it. That way people understand. When the IESG sees it, they'll be like, oh, yeah, look at that. We looked at that before. And you won't get a lot of crap back.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that familiarity is very trumps everything else, right?
Yeah,
so don't
and the
surprise
converse
people.
is, if it looks different, they're gonna what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. If the 4.5 seconds for them to rearrange it in their head, yeah, that's just a what's the right word?
Discuss in the coming.
Well, or it's just it's a hurdle that stops their brain from going, right? And then they have to, and just So go with whatever's common.
Okay. I will very gladly rip off whatever Elliot did in Skim. All right.
I guess I was just reacting to the fact that it doesn't interpret, decode, or modify these payloads when I thought that's what it did.
Actually, it does. Yeah, you're right. This is actually not the correct statement. Because it totally does, right? Because but I think it didn't before we used SDF actually. Because now we determine what the we determine what the we determine kind of what the protocol mapping is in SDF, and before we didn't do that. Yeah, so yeah, this needs to be updated. I really don't like the explanation here. Okay, so yeah, I haven't looked at this yet. This is also one of the text updates.
All right, come back to it.
Yeah, I think we need to
Argue
come
about
back
it
to
on Saturday, the hackathon, whatever.
Yeah. Onboarding you want to replace with registration. Yeah, we already use registration as when we register like SDF models, and we use onboarding when we talk about like onboarding a device. So do you think that onboarding and do you think that we should use registration in both areas? So when we talk about Skim, we talk about onboarding. When we talk about like NIPSI. There is actually a NIPSI registration API for SDF models.
So I think my first point is that I would prefer to lower the cognitive load of different terms and different things. And so there's a T2TRG document from the other Mohit about how some of these terms are used around the industry, and it's a mess. And so all I'm saying is that if we can avoid a new unique combination of these words,
okay.
Great. Okay. I'm not going to argue with you strongly about the different registration words, because I think that's okay. That's a more generic term that happens everywhere. But I'm just saying, if we can be consistent with some ecosystem for the word of onboarding, bootstrapping, enrollment, whichever ecosystem that is, just be consistent with that one.
Okay, and Michael, do you have a reference to that T2TRG doc, or?
Yeah, I'll put it in here. Yeah, in this issue.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll take a look at that, and I'll propose something. Yes, your point is correct. If it's not clear, we can update. This is an easy one. Yeah, still needs to be updated. For onboarding, yeah, this is similar to. This is similar to your previous comment, right, Michael?
Yeah, it's exactly. I think. Yeah, we went on, and we got more concerned with the term than before.
Yeah.
76. Yeah. Oh, and actually, we're going through the issues backwards here. So
yeah.
Okay. Apparently, I have to say something. Maybe. There we go.
Yeah, I think I think you've interpreted that correctly. I think that's the point. And then so we can reword that, and okay. So you think that there's a this section should be called motivation or opportunity rather than scope, and these two things need to be clarified.
I suggest you have a section called scope, which says, what does this thing do? What does it do? And what does it not do? And then I think you should have a new section, motivation and opportunity, that says that essentially these gateways are already out there. They're being produced. This is not a new piece of network equipment that we're suddenly introducing. But it's but the fact that the equipment is out there or being built already, that it's an opportunity to get some unification.
Yeah. Okay. Clear.
Okay. This is really about the same thing, just maybe,
there's also motivation, right?
Yeah. If there are, 3.5 product names out there that do something, then but only do it the gateway, then maybe it's worth.
Yeah, I think we have one or two somewhere else in the document, so we probably need to, or in that. I remember we put in one or two, one for BLE and I think one for Zigbee as well.
Elliot, you're in the queue. Please just unmute and speak. I don't think we need to queue so much with 8 people.
Sorry, old queue.
Karsten?
So new queue. There is an implementation status section. Should we have one?
That would also work, but it speaks the other direction.
What
that
section?
There is an RFC about how to write an implementation status section. And the good thing about those sections is that they are deleted before the RFC is published. So we have the implementation status section at a time when things are still quickly moving. So we actually have to touch them in every revision of the document. But then when it's published as an RFC, we don't have a rapidly aging section that is totally out of date 2 years after publishing the RFC. So I think the basic idea behind having this implementation status section is really good. And I think we should pick this up and in particular solicit input from as many people as possible to describe the implementation so it can be in that section.
So, and would that pertain to implementation status of the draft, or because this is references? So the reference that we're discussing about here is a reference to, implementations that provide gateway functions but non-standard, like for specific applications, so non-generic or universal.
Well, it's meant to be implementations of the draft, but since this never has to pass ISG, we can just put in there what we think is useful to have.
Okay. So both, basically.
And of course, mentioning an implementation and saying this does not yet have NIPSI is also an interesting statement.
Yeah, I can live with that. It's not how I would have done it, but I think that's a brilliant kind of, yeah. And as you say, that the information will become stale, so that works for me. I think you're just trying to explain to the ISG why we're bothering.
We don't have to because it's deleted when they approve it.
No, but they read it before they delete it.
Yeah, and they should know what's going on.
The point is they're like, why in the world are you doing this? This is silly. No, it's because, yeah, okay. So I'm all for that. Yeah. Let's go on. On.
All right. Yeah, this is the same. We just talked about this, the well-known, and this seems to be the same comment as
83.
Well, yeah, 83. Yeah, but this is one by Ari, and 83 is by you, Michael. So I think that's why there's 2 issues.
I don't know. That's what you want. Parent issue. All right, that's fine. Okay.
Problem details. Yeah, this is in draft. We did this in draft 7. Draft 6. There was some more discussions on not using NIPSI status, but the or custom, like IANA registered types, which we did update in draft 7. So I think this one is closed, or can be closed, sorry. I don't know if we have to wait for Ari to confirm that because he opened it, but
I think it's enough that he'll see that it's closed.
okay.
I just added this.
Yeah.
So just a hint on writing IANA consideration sections. Write a brain dump what you want to have there. And we can always fix it and make it an actual IANA consideration section, but it's much more important to actually capture what should be there.
Thank you, Karsten. We've never done this before, so yeah.
Already. We did this already. Closed. Okay.
I think we're more or less through it. No,
we didn't talk about this one yet.
No. Yeah, I think this is possible. And
I think we already addressed this as well.
did we?
Yeah, we just return a list instead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Close?
Yes.
Yeah. SDF model. I think we also did address this one.
Yeah, I think you did.
I think
because I think what you said is that you're going to go register the new model with when the firmware is updated, you're going to register the new model for the new firmware.
Yeah.
And at some point, the SDF reference count on the old model goes to 0 when there are no more devices. That's what I think. Right.
Yeah.
So I think we addressed it.
I reopened this because I had closed this without opening it in the or without closing it in an actual meeting. So
okay. Okay, so now we're down to 23 open, 22 closed. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? We have officially 5 minutes left. This has been very useful, I think.
Michael, I just want to bring up, Michael, that we did register a hackathon program or table for NIPSI in the face-to-face. So
I think it's more a courtesy than anything else, so that other people can find you and know that it's happening.
Yeah.
As opposed to you won't get space if you don't register.
So we'll be there, and we'll bring an implementation also if anybody feels like getting their hands dirty and testing it.
I would love to, but I believe I will be too occupied with my own table of shit. Anybody else today? We are scheduled July ASDF. It's Thursday morning, 9:30 European time. Patio 3. Oh, that sounds lovely. Patio 3. Implies there might be drinks with umbrellas, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can then schedule for the next virtual interim right there at the meeting, isn't it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
I think that's reasonable. We can do that as one of our first items, is just to do that. It seems like we should continue this thing at least monthly, more often if we like. Yeah. I don't love this time, but I can cope with it. Rohit, how are you feeling? I heard that Californians get up this early all the time to go surfing.
No, I don't get up this early usually, but I have to wait for this meeting.
Would a half an hour later be better for you?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I don't think we can go further than that because I'll run into the core CBOR pattern. But I think we could do half an hour later. Does that work? Would that work for everyone? I know I'm just doing what I just said we would do at the meeting, but I'll come back to it and propose it at the meeting.
Yeah, it works for me.
Half an hour works, more than half an hour won't work.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should check with our Korean friends.
Yeah, hoping they'll.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Hong and I will attend the Madrid meeting. See you at the meeting. Thank you.
See you there.
All right, good. All right. Talk to you guys all in 3 weeks, and if not sooner. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.